Hey everyone, Jules and Janelle here for another revolutionary conversation. Join us on the dance floor today as we talk and discuss and invite you into the experience of living a life of what was the word you used? What was the word you used, Janelle? Like living,
No
when you
regret.
said it was just like, "Whoa," so super potent.
No
Living a
regret.
no regrets life. Mm. Can you feel that? There's just something so beautiful, the thought of living a life with no regrets. And in fact, Janelle, and I want you to start up this conversation. I'm just going to throw this like little piece out there. Is I remember in one realm when I was looking at different marketing, I was like, what moves people? What would make people move to want to like take action? And I remember the top three things that people said before they died is
Mm.
they said that they wished that, like, this is one of the biggest regrets, they wish that they had lived a life that they wanted to instead of the life that other people expected of them. And I was like, oh my God, that is, oh, that's it. That's it.
And that's
Yeah.
so extraordinary because if you can even imagine, that is the greatest pain. That's the greatest pain. And so, in some way, when I was young, I said to myself, I'm not going to die with any music in me. I'm going to live it out. I'm going to live it all out. And the great blessing, in a certain way, because everything is a blessing when you lean into it and let it show you and reveal you something more golden than what seems real in the moment, is I lost my best friend when I was 16, and she lived a revolutionary life. Many people knew her and revered her for her wisdom at that time, at 16. And she was my best friend because she saw me, and she was fearless, not because she overcame fear, but because she had life force, energy, and purpose that emanated from her in everything she did. And so when I lost her, I knew in some way she was letting me now carry the torch for this life. And her saying, great saying, was spend your life on something that will outlast it. Spend your life on something that will outlast it. Potent wisdom.
Wow.
And spend is like a currency, like spend your life, spend your intention, spend your money, spend your devotion and your attention and intention on something so grand that your soul can fully come alive and your heart feels the passion and the power of the authorship of the soul. And so at that young age, I promised to myself that I was going to live a no regrets life. That whenever I heard the whisper or whenever I had an intuitive inspiration that came through, I paid attention to it because I knew that time doesn't wait for anybody. And I didn't know how much time I had. And instead of being in fear, I said, every single moment matters. Everything I do matters in all ways and always. Always, everything matters in all ways and always. So if I start my day that way, that sets up a great dance floor for a wonderful life that begins to be fueled by purpose, the power, passion. It gives way and freedom to everything that wants to come alive through me. And that's why Jules and I are having these conversations, because we bring each other so alive that we go, we must share this. Because what if everybody becomes wildly alive and recognizes their own invincibility? I can't imagine anything better than that.
Oh, I all of the feels in my body as you say that, Janelle, because the that which brought us together is the fact we share this like great like passion for wanting to help with the evolution of human consciousness of us being able to recognize inside of ourselves what we're fully capable of. And I haven't heard that whole story about your friend, and she just sounds, well, obviously she was a revolutionary leader who was needed on the other side to pass this forward to you. Speaking of passing things forward, right? So that we can live this now. Um, but that love of, I know lots of people will say, wow, like, Jules, like, it's just you. It's like, actually, this is alive in all of us. It's just that we don't always allow it to come through, or it wasn't safe to come through, or certain times in our life just like had to take us into that state of just kind of being sealed up until the time comes, like a seed, right? It
Mm.
needs to have that, like the fire scar, until the time when it germinates. And when it's ready, it's so ready you can't keep it from unfurling into its like amazing infinite potential. And so Janelle and I were talking earlier about like what could we share that would have people in this space on the dance floor with us, like you said, that like that beautiful fertile ground of growth and expansion into our own capacity. And it's the sharing of our own stories. It's the sharing of the things that inspire us, because there's some little nugget that inspires you in the same way. And it'll land differently in each and every one of you that's listening, but it will invigorate something inside of you that will pop and illuminate the surface of your own revolution, of your own revelation in your being. And so one of the things that we had talked about was the things in our lives that have the little whispers, right? When you make that devotion to yourself, when you promise that you're going to live that life without regrets, then when the whispers come, they come, and you cannot ignore them, because you've pretty much promised that you're not going to have regrets. And if something's whispering to you and you ignore it, then there's a potential of a regret. So it's like one way or the other. I love to share
Mm-hmm.
mine, but I'd love to hear yours first, Janelle. Like what was the first memory or time that feels important to share about like a whisper that came through you that you jumped on, that common sense would tell you, or your old programming would tell you that's crazy, or you shouldn't do that. Like, yeah, what was your whisper?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because the whispers come in a lot of different ways. And as a elite athlete with a lot of fire and focus and kinetic potential, it was easy for me to use that Janelle power and not really recognize that there was the power, the force of the universe conspiring to support me so that I could be greater than the Janelle. And so this is poignant because I recognize in some way I was in my own way. Even though I was creating this a great business for myself and on Team USA and had so much fire behind my goal, that chapter of my life was being lived by I, me, and my. It was like Janelle's universe. And there were times when I would slow down and I would feel the pain and the isolation of that, while there was still a lot of energy potential behind it. And I had this dream one night, and it was a dream. There was this voice that was so powerful that said, if you stay on this path, you're probably going to get MS. I was like, what? I mean, I had no recollection, no association with it, but I could feel, I got this little whispering sample of that fire being so contained. If you choose I, me, and my, you're going to burn yourself up. And so that was an awakening moment, because I knew that dream was the whisper that it was a choice point. Come back, come back, come back to that center that you know, and start witnessing and start looking at life and yourself and your relationship with the world and people differently. And I took it so seriously that I actually started to volunteer for MS people, and to look at that and let that be the reflection of myself. I started to volunteer and look at the grand scheme of things on a larger plane. And I deeply think that that was a choice moment for me. And there were others, but that one was like there was a fork in the road there. And it was so clear, because the dream could have been like, oh, it's a dream, I denied, whatever. And I took it seriously, because I could feel it. There was something more than just this subconscious movie that was passing through. And the other one that I think is revolutionary is that from the time I was a child, I always dreamed of being a California girl. There was something alive in me. I felt like there was enough space for me to be free and creative, and out of the rigid sort of contained lifestyle of growing up in the Midwest, where I spent my first 20 years. And so after I spent a period of time moving through my athletics and having my business, it was like I sort of had a taste of the full buffet table. And I was like, but you know what? There's still this seed in my soul. I'm still dreaming of California. I'm still yearning for that lifestyle that was going to bring me wildly alive. And so my prayer was, where is the most fertile soil for my soul? And so what I did is I actually started to turn that warrior self into the yin and the feminine, the goddess of listening. And I said, ooh, I need to bow to that. Because if I'm asking the universe for something, I need to pay homage and be in pilgrimage and be in my humility and listen. She has a way that you cannot know unless you listen. And so that was my chapter of devotion from that whisper, learning to whisper, because I really wanted to live in California. And so what I did is I created this mind mapping journey of listening. And really, that was the beginning of my awakening. And that was the beginning that set me off to the synchronistic moment when I got invited to California. And so when I was 35, I said, you know, if I don't just pay attention to this and live my dream, I'll never get there. Janelle, it's up to you. So I left everything at 12 years of my life and my work and everything. And I put everything into my Corvair and my Xterra and took one-way tickets, started all over. And I have the most beautiful life. It's been 23 years. And all of this is unfolded because I listened to the whisper. And I remembered that promise of the no regrets life. I'll never know if I don't do it. And so I remember this every single day, Jules, because I wake up to the paradise of my soul, because I was in devotion to that. Poignant moments that could be missed if we're not listening.
And the recognition of the choice point of knowing that the listening is taking you to that point where you get to choose. And it's so interesting, because we don't know what would happen otherwise, right? Like we never know in that regard.
Yeah.
But to know that at that choice point, at that point um, where it all bifurcates, where it breaks off, and you go, okay, I could choose this one or this one. Uh, those are the big moments. Those
Big
big
moments.
moments. Yeah. Um, it's so interesting because as you were telling your story, I was like, oh, ugh, that's the one for me. That's the one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember a time in my reality, I had just finished massage therapy school. My boyfriend at the time had wanted to move out to Halifax, never been to the East Coast apart from visiting when I was a kid. And I was like, yeah, once I'm done school, we'll go out east. And love this man, super amazing soul. And as I was as I was in therapy session one day with a couple of other therapists, we were doing a group session. It came up. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm not supposed to be with them anymore. They're like, oh, well, just sit with that. I was like, oh no, I'm sure it's just nothing, right? Like, because we love to deny it because why step out of something that's so wonderful, right? I love this man. He's a wonderful character. We're on this amazing adventure together. There is nothing wrong with our relationship. I could see.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh no, just push it down a little bit. Just a little bit. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, comfortable again. And then I remember driving home. It's maybe like 2 weeks later. I was driving home. We were going to go to karaoke that night with a friend, and I was driving my truck. This song comes on the radio, and we all know how music, for me specifically, and I know for a lot of
Yes.
people, music's a big one. Like frequency, energy, frequency, and vibration. Right? Tesla said it. Um, I was listening, and this song says, "Did you ever have to make up your mind? Worry about one thing, leave the other behind." And whoop, choice point, right? I was like,
Boom.
oh, I have to break up
The
with him.
precipice.
And all of a sudden, I started crying. I was driving my little truck, my little Chevy S10 at the time. And I
Ah,
remember just like breaking down, crying, because I knew at that point that was that was not even a whisper, that was a shout. And if
yes.
I were to try to push that shout down, like you said, MS, I would have got some sort of dis-ease. I would have been injured. I would have something else would have forced me to a different, bigger breaking point. And I just remember getting out of the truck and falling to my knees and
Mm.
just like bawling and going, how is this possible that I have to not only break the heart of this man that I love so much, but break my own heart
Break your own
in
heart.
break my own heart. Like how could my body, how could my intuition, how could my soul ask me to break my own heart and the heart of somebody I love so much? Ugh. Now,
Bigger than life. These moments are bigger than life.
bigger than life, right? And unexplainable, not easy to for anybody else to comprehend. Even the woman who was a friend of mine at that night at karaoke was like, okay, settle down again. He got up and sang a song. Of course, it's a song again. He sang Turn the Page by Bob Seger. It's like he was inviting me to tell him what to do. I was like, okay. I went to the bathroom. I cried. I remember her coming in.
Undeniable.
Undeniable. She came in and she's like, what's wrong? I was like, I have to break up with him. She said, what do you mean? You guys are awesome together. I was like, it doesn't matter. I said, this has to happen. And like she couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't comprehend it. How could I expect anybody else to get it? But that point and that choice point at that moment, it just needed to be done. And moral, moving forward, 3 days later, I met my husband, who I've been with for, you know, celebration, love celebration, 10 years today, 10 years today, 20
Oh,
years altogether.
God,
We've been
you
together. Right. And he
monumental.
got together with her, the one who was at in the bathroom with me, saying like, why are you doing this? He's still with her. They have 2 kids. Like the you couldn't make this up, but you can't deny those connections to yourself. And in those 3 days before I met Phil, I promised myself that I would never be with somebody that I couldn't be fully myself with. Did I even know I wasn't being fully myself with him? No. But I knew that a new commitment to myself needed to be made before I moved forward. And that's the like those are those pieces, those choice points that don't make sense. But when we listen to the
Right.
whispers and when we're tuned into ourselves enough, like you said, the fertile soil of the soul, if that is something that you have committed yourself to actually continuing to cultivate, then it's gonna get louder and louder, and it's gonna be more clear and more clear. You're not gonna necessarily like it, but it's gonna be more clear, and it's gonna
Beautiful.
always work out.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Life is a mystery. And, it's so sweet to see that when we turn back, you see the work of the benevolence. Because when we vow to and promise the most authentic, original life that is being true to our heart and our soul, the universe conspires, the great intelligence it conspires for you to live your best life that you can utilize your gold, the jewels that live within you. And it's likely that those seeds, those impetus moments are beckoning you to come fully alive to yourself. And to me, there's probably nothing that's more valuable to me than living that and sharing, being a catalyst, being a guide, being a support person for someone to access and to find, discover, and bring through that invincibility that's beckoning from the soul level. And that's very similar in our work with leadership, because what does it start with? What is the foundation? As Jules likes to talk about foundation, it's the relationship we have with ourself. Because when we're honest and true and loyal to ourself, we remain centered in the midst of the ever changing. So inside of us, there's something that is not changing. That's our soul. And when we have a relationship with our soul, there's something inside of us that trusts and knows beyond the uncertainty of the uncharted waters. And so
Mm.
when we have that relationship with ourselves and that which is greater than ourselves, we really invite that divine choreography to begin to live us, love us up, and bring us alive to our true self.
That reminds me too, as you say that, Janelle, I was like, oh, feel my body moving. I was like, just like a song pulls you to the dance floor, right? It's
Yeah,
like
the
that,
pull.
like, yeah, that movement of knowing it's your soul that's the inner drive. And you're gonna connect with
Mm,
all sorts of other people who are having their own inner drive move them to the dance
yes.
floor. And you're all there dancing together, but not to prove anything to one another, but to create this beautiful enrichment of the soil that's moving through you as a as it tickles your toes. We've talked about like just tickling your toes and reminding you of this golden thread of connection of you being a soul having a human experience. We're working from a place of creativity, and instead of forcing something to happen, instead of the old way of
Yes.
making things happen and planning and implementing, it's like nature doesn't implement, nature doesn't plan. It all happens naturally and organically and uniquely, but it comes from an inspiration. It comes from the seed
Yes.
germinating at the right time with the right conditions.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Inspiration. Breathe in the life force energy, the prana, and it will give you the power and that life force energy to bring it alive. And that to me, there's nothing more revolutionary than that. Because imagine, like, I'm a dreamer. I'm a dreamer. I love to dream. And I also love to distill those dreams and start believing them and orchestrating them into the infrastructure of my life through what we often talk about as our routines and our rituals, which is weaving the golden thread from inside and from in relationship with the world and humanity. And once you start believing and living that belief in the dream, once you give permission for that dream to come alive, you start living that dream, because that is what nature does, doesn't it? And it's a beautiful thing. You know, I always say, if you want to take the ceiling off of your life, sleep on under the stars and know yourself as interconnected to everything. And know that every atom molecule is here to align with you and conspire to bring you wildly alive to your true purpose, your soul self, that all the music, all the intelligence, the inner genius can come alive and live and be lived. Because isn't that just the greatest gift that we could give humanity and ourselves?
To come alive to the inner symphony.
Mm.
I can't imagine. I invite anybody, when you come alive to that inner symphony within you, could you possibly have any regrets?
Ha, that's impossible, isn't it?
Mm.
That's right. Play big.
Yeah.
Dive into the gold.
And with that, it feels like the perfect place to leave all of our beautiful dancers out on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the next
Right there.
conversation. Yes.
Beautiful.
See you next time. Thank you so much, Janelle.
Blessings. See you on
Thanks
the
to
dance
everybody.
floor.
See you on the dance floor. Thanks everybody for joining in. We'll see you next time.